YouTube, Brian Phillips here again. Airbus A380. Lots of scale details going into this thing lately. And tonight will be no exception. We've got a short video series for you. What are we on, 22 now? Basically, I'm working on antennas tonight. I want this thing to look really good. And there's no exception. You gotta have the antennas on an Airbus because it really helps to sell it. And they're really, really easy to do. Plus, we're gonna do some special things here. We're gonna do some special things here. So without further ado, let's walk in there and show you how I've got these going now. As is typical on all of my scale details, I start with a simple picture and then I start making notes. I say, okay, that's what I want. Then I got to find the right pictures that help represent what I'm trying to figure out. So I printed out this picture and I started doing the math just so I could scale up the difference here. Okay. So I measured here. I used just calipers. I measured this out and it figured out to be 27.5 millimeters. And then I went out and I measured the actual height of our plane at 6.5 inches tall. I actually measured from the table to the bottom of the plane, and then I just looked at the top of the plane. So I eyeballed it with just a tape measure. It's very simple. Did the conversion so that we were comparing the same units of measure to 165.1 millimeters. And then I figured out that that was about 1/6 by doing the math. 27.5 over that, or that over that. It doesn't matter which way you go. Still the relative difference is going to be a 6-to-1 ratio. So that means this thing would be 6 times bigger if I wanted to mount it on my airplane and have it look like this drawing. Okay? So then the next thing comes into play, which is finding some sort of plastic or whatever. And so I've got all this crap down here. I keep plastic cups and stuff. And I had this thing from I don't even know what the heck this thing was. Oh, it must have been like a stacking toy for one of my kids. So I took and cut this out. And originally, I was thinking, well, I want to be able to flip the plane upside down and not worry about the antennas while I'm working on them. So I thought maybe I'll do this. But then I got to thinking, if I have these flimsy things, they might actually flop around in the breeze and create some sort of a buzzing effect. It's going to not sound very good, right? And then I was just reminded of how the antennas were mounted on the Airbus, and I've had pretty good luck with those. They haven't been a big issue. I mean, there's a lot of scale details on these things. Okay. Now, it came with those on that Airbus. So, anyway, I got the shape. I figured out the size comparison, so those came out to 2.5 millimeters times a ratio of 6-to-1, gives us 15 millimeters high. And that's not 15 millimeters from here to here, that's 15 millimeters from like the top to where the fuse would be. So it's actually like right here. And so I just made my first one real rough and just measured it out. And then I figured there's short ones. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tall ones, and then 1, 2 short ones. So I just made my little list. The short ones need to be 9.6 millimeters, so I just called them 10 millimeters. And this is what you end up with. Okay, and all you have to do is just get the angle that you slide them into the foam correct. But I wanted to go over how we're going to do the location of each of these items, because locating them is, I would argue, almost as important as actually making them look scale. Because it's very critical to get them in the right spot, or they're not going to look scale even if you have the right size. Okay? So that's what we're going to do next, is we're going to look at that. Now, I do have a thin one for one of the bottom ones. And the reason I'm going to do a thin one here is because that might get hit when we do a roll. Okay? So I want that to be sacrificial, and I don't want it to damage the fuse. But if something's going to get damaged, it'll be that one. And it's super easy to replace them. I'll show you how to put them in so you can replace them fairly easy. I mean, they got to break out, but they're not that hard to fix. Okay, so now on the nacelles, there's this strange little fin. There's my version. Now, I didn't even measure. I just kind of put them up on the pictures that I found and said, does that look about right to you? And then I used this shadow as a good reference. Now, keeping in mind, that shadow is being cast onto a round and convex shape. So basically, the shadow is not a really great thing for reference because you can't trace it or anything like that. So I'm having to do my best estimation. It looks like a shark fin to me. It is definitely at an angle, and they all point inboard. So no matter which nacelle you're looking at, they all go inboard. So those things are going to be super easy to do, and they're not hard to locate, so we might actually go ahead and do those first just because it's so dang easy, and then they'll be done. But let's show you how I made those. Those were really easy. One little tip is when you're making these really dinky pieces like this, it's generally easier to work with a flat piece and then fold it at the end if you're going to glue them on the flat. But you can also slide these in, just cut a pocket and slip them in. Now that's not necessarily what I'm going to do here, because if you look at the way these things are mounted, they're actually folded and mounted. So I figured we'd mimic that look, even though it's not a big tail like that. Okay? So this is the thicker plastic, and then this is the thinner plastic. And so folds are always a good place to get some strength. But what we're going to do on these is really simple. We're just going to lay it down, get one edge so you don't have to cut it. And then I want to cut the longest cut so that I can remove as minimum amount of material and still get what I need. And I'm going to overcut this a little bit because there's a little bit of a curve on here. And then I'm going to get my next critical cut, which is going to give us our angle. Okay, then I can take that away, and this is just the touchy part. You gotta just get it as close as you can, and then you can compare it to your control, and that'll be plenty good for us. We don't care about the exact size of the tail, but since it may be exposed, we're going to go ahead and trim them so that they're about the same. And when I say about the same, they can be very close, and it'll be fine. So there's one more. Put it on a black thing so you can see it. Okay, and then we're going to duplicate that process one more time here, and then we'll go ahead and start gluing stuff. Probably do the nacelles quick, and then we can start locating the antennas. As soon as we're done with that, we'll go ahead and move on to the next step, if we have enough time. And just so you guys know my plan for schedule on maiden of this plane, because obviously at any time we could go ahead and pretty much maiden this plane. I am working out one detail, and that is I do not know the center of gravity on this plane. It's not listed in the manual, which is an embarrassment, but it is what it is. So now, how do you get these angles exactly the same? Well, you're not going to get the angles exactly the same. You're just going to do that by eye. But what I found that works really sharp is to use a pair of flat pliers like this. And you can flip it to where you've got your fold. And then you can grab right along the fold line. And then you can go ahead and do your fold. Now, it doesn't look like we're lined up perfectly, so I'm going to go ahead and double check that. And incidentally, we are lined up on this part, which is what we're concerned with. It's just that I don't have a perfect cut on the bottom, on the tail that's going to either be inserted or glued. So we'll just trim that real quick. When you start making really small cuts like this, the scissors start slipping and doing weird things, so just plan on it. Okay, so make sure that you're lined up where you need it to be. One of these days is going to focus, guys. Okay, so now we can hold that really tight. so it won't slip. And if you can't get your fingers in between there, just grab an X-Acto blade. Get it started. And then you can drop off your control. Come back in and finish your fold. Okay? And once you have your fold, if you really want it to be a good crease, you can double back the other way. Okay? But you will weaken a lot of plastics if you do that, so you want to make sure you make them opposing pairs like that. Because remember, one side's going to be on this wing and one side's going to be on the other wing. So essentially you're going to have a total of 4, and they're going to be opposite one another. Okay? So line up the critical portion. Hang on to it tight. And as you can see, it's a lot easier if you can just straighten this out. So if you get it flat, you'll be able to do it in about half the time. Now I'm going to fold the top piece this time. Okay, so there's 2 of them. Take out the other piece. So now we just need to see if I have opposing pairs by laying them side by side, which I do. And I would like that to go down, and this to go down, and then over here they'll be opposite, of course. So let's go out and glue those on. But before we do that, why don't we get a little texture on there? And you can do this a variety of ways, either some sandpaper or just an X-Acto knife. And you'll want it to be a fairly sharp X-Acto knife if you're going to do the X-Acto knife method. And just get in there and score it with a crosshatch pattern. Because this plastic is very slippery. Okay, so we got that. We got these, and I'm actually tempted to use mucilage instead of using CA for this, even though CA would probably work right now. It's more likely to get a little bit brittle and pop free. So we will probably go ahead and just use the mucilage. Okay, so we got score marks on both of those, and we aren't even going to use the sanding block. And then mucilage, we can, whoops, that's not the one I want to use. I want to use the one that's already started and low. Now, one little warning about this: if you do this and you're hoping to be able to remove them, don't use mucilage, because this stuff is going to rip off more stuff around it than if you were to use CA, in my opinion. Okay, so just if you're going to potentially remove them, or you're not sure you like the way they look, then you'll want to go ahead and use, oops, that thing's not supposed to be in there, is it? That's one of my tall ones. Oh, I never actually got this adjusted. That's one of my short ones. Okay, so we'll take 2 of these. Just get into that sticky stuff. And we'll go ahead and grab into it a little bit more. And this almost becomes like a sticker, okay? So we can use this as our guide, because we can see on either one where it's supposed to end up. We'll just walk out to the plane and get these things stuck on. Now we're going to be working on the right wing, or, well, technically that'd be the left wing of the plane. Now you can see I'm not going to be able to get my fingers in there, so I have to go ahead and get some forceps or some pliers or something that will allow me to manipulate these into a tight spot. So I'm just going to drop that on the plastic for now. Okay, so right before we go in, put this on the plane. We'll dip into the glue again. And then we'll just come right in. And just noticing that they're, you know, like in this general vicinity. We'll go ahead and stick that on there. I'm going to pull it off because I noticed we got a little bit of excess that you'll be able to see, and I don't want that. The other thing I'm noticing is I'd like to crease that in a little bit tighter. So you can see now, this is not going to be a super duper well seen scale detail, but I'm going to know it's there, and it's going to be awesome still. So I can tolerate that since I know it's going to be there. Okay, just using the first one as a reference. Even if the first one's wrong, I want to make this one equally wrong. Okay? Except I didn't make the angle the same. But I kind of like the angle of the second one. Ooh, that one's on there now. It's not coming off again. Not unless I crash or something. This mucilage stuff is crazy strong. And it generally works very good in my opinion. So needs to actually be moved down just a hair. Okay, now that we're in position there, we'll just double check for spacing. Use a size reference. Yep, that's good. Okay, cool. So that's a pretty small scale detail, guys. We're going to do the other side and come right back to you. Alright guys, so we got the other side on. You know, and these things individually might seem a little ridiculous, but it's all about the whole picture, you know. When you see this thing all together, it's going to be really cool. Okay, so now we're going to get the antennas located first, and then we'll get them stuck in there, and I'll show you how to do that next. Okay guys, so we've got basically the same exact system of measurement here. So we're going to take and measure from a known point. The known point in our case could be the nose, which would probably be the most distinct. And so we're at we're very close to 40 millimeters here. Okay, so we're probably a little bit closer to like 39, but we'll just call it 40 millimeters for ease. Okay, 40 millimeters. So remember, it's a 6-to-1 ratio. So you just take 40 millimeters times 6 would be 240 millimeters. Now we want to do the conversion to figure out. We want to figure out what that's going to be in metric or in standard. So just whip out your handy dandy phone, and then you're just going to type in, what is that, 240 millimeters would be 9.44882 inches. Okay, so we're going to probably call that 9.5 inches. Okay, to the first point. Then we have a reference. From the first point to the second point, you'd be basically $62. So 62 times 4, or excuse me, 62 times 6 would be 372. 372 would be 14. 14.65 inches from this point to that point. So that's more from the nose. And then from there to the next one, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to get those marks and I'll come right back. Okay, so we have our measurements. So our first measurement's going to be 9.4 inches from the nose, then another 14.65, then another 12.25, then another 3.5. So what I am going to use is I'm going to use a piece of masking tape, and it's this wide stuff. So what I can do is really simple. We'll just take and go cut, 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 and then cut, and then we've got it ready to go. So we can just quickly rip those and then do our locations. Okay, so we're going to walk out there and get that going right now. Grab a tape measure, grab our drawing, and then we'll just slap these on right now. It'll be super easy. Okay, so the first mark is going to be at 9.5 inches from the nose. So we just measure from the nose to 9.5 inches. Okay? And it's going to be right at the crown, or the top. So 9.5 inches. Now remember, this is not a super exacting thing, but you do need to make it pretty close, or it's going to look dumb. 14.65 more inches. 14.65, so good enough right there. Now obviously 0.65 doesn't calculate very well because we're in eighths instead of tenths, so whatever, good enough. Okay, then we need 12.25 more to the last tall one. 12.25. Again, precision is important at certain steps. This is just kind of getting you in the right spot, generally. Okay, so now another 3.5 inches to the last mark. Okay, so 3.5 inches would put us right about here. Okay, so now let's cross-reference our drawing and just make sure it looks right before we start sticking blades in. Okay, so we got boom, 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 and boom. Yep, that's right. Okay, cool. So now the next step is really easy, and this is where you want to maybe be a little bit careful not to jump the gun on putting everything in to the newly created holes. And I don't want all these things to blow away, because that'd be a pain in the butt to pick those all up. They're super light, you know. Okay, so we know which ones are long and which ones are short by our drawing. So of course I just covered that up. And we don't want to mucilage anything yet. Okay, so the first one we're going to do is right here. So just line up the seam and just cut. Okay, and just work your blade back and forth. That's really all you got to do. Then take whichever one you prefer to use for the first one. Probably want to use the most pretty one if you have a most pretty one, because it's going to be the one that's seen a lot. So we might as well just do this one. Okay, we can just slip that into the hole. Just as simple as that, guys. Now we'll glue those here in a short minute. But you see we've got a little bit of flexibility, but not so much that it's going to blow out of there. Okay? And the rationale behind actually cutting is to get a nice square plunge. You don't want to have this at an angle look really bad if they flop over. The other thing you're probably thinking to yourself is there's not much thickness to these. You know, is that going to look bad? No. Because like if this is coming at you, even if you had like a plastic build, you're going to see the wing. You're going to see the vertical stabilizer. Alright, cool. So then we can just grab another big one. Slice and dice. You don't even need to make it all the way through the entire depth of the model. Okay. Oh shoot, that one's not even cut. That one's not. That was the one that I never finished up. Oh wait, yeah it is. I just had it going the wrong way. There we go. And once we're satisfied, we'll just literally come back and throw a little bit of glue on there. And you can see how hard I'm pressing on that one because I didn't get my cut deep enough, the plunge cut. So you may not even have to glue them, but look how much detail that adds, guys. Looks awesome. Now let's put a small one at the back. This is the flexible one. This is probably the best one, and I just wasn't even going to use it. And see how easy it is when you get it marked out? Then you don't have to go and sit there and second guess all your placements. You kind of know it's right, which is super nice. It makes it a lot less scary to do. Now that one I need to trim on the top. I never did make my horizontal trim, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about here. Now the bottom ones are going to be a little bit more awkward to do, and it's going to be a little bit harder to film. So I might just do those and give you guys a quick look at them when we're done. It's the same exact process though. These are all supposed to be like that. They almost look like the tail on the plane. That's how you can tell if you've got it right. So you can kind of make a quick reference against the vertical stabilizer. Oh yes, so gorgeous. Okay, cool. So let's grab some glue and we'll go ahead and get those stuck in there with some mucilage. So we've got the top ones done. That just really helped a lot, I think, in terms of details. And it's the type of thing that's got a high bang for the buck, you know. Okay, so we measured for our math, and we need to go back 11.8 inches back to the small one, and then an inch forward to the big one. Now, we've got a little bit of a complication here in that we've got our gear, nose gear. So let's go ahead and measure, and we'll see if we can even accomplish that. I told you that the bottom would be a little bit more complicated. So we're going to go to 11.8 inches. So we'll just call it like 11 3/4 would be fine. So 11 3/4 from the nose would be right in that spot where we're going to need to grab to pull that thing open. So I think we're just going to cheat it back a little bit further, guys. I do not want to be fighting that all the time and getting stabbed by it. That would not be very cool. And then, incidentally, the very far back one, which is a tall one, is going to be this one here. And it's actually going to be this much in front of the blue stripe. I already measured that and just took it up by 6 right on here. I didn't have to use the Google thing. Okay. So now this time I'm just going to roll the plane. Well, I can't roll it back. I'll hit the wing into the wall. So we'll have to just... Well, this one's going to be tough to film like I thought. I'll come right back and show you what it looks like. Okay, so I flipped it over because I felt bad that I'm not filming that step. So remember on the drawing, it's at the front of the swoop. So the front of the swoop is way up here on ours. So it's almost into the wing box. Which, interestingly enough, we're not quite at the wing box on this one. So I'm not sure if there's a disparity in the scale details here. But I think we'll just go ahead and put it right up in front. So it'll be right here. Okay, so I'm going to cut down in there. We'll just slip that in. Which is kind of nice because we won't have a roll issue now. I don't think. That looks really cool. Let's do the mucilage so you can see how I do that. Okay, so we basically just put a little bit on one side. We do a little bit on the other, just the part that's going to plunge in, and then we pull off some excess. We put it in, and then we pull it back out, and we spin and pick up any of that junk. Okay? So we pick up that stuff, and then we can slide it back in. And it's like hard to get in now, which means it's going to hold. Okay? And then as soon as we're done with that, we immediately go back to our Q-tip, a fresh one if you're not sure it's clean. You'll just come in here and just spin the Q-tip, and it'll pull any excess out. And guys, this is one of those details that doesn't show up very good on camera because of the nature of the colors. But believe me, it's going to look awesome. It's going to look really good. Okay, so now the front one. The front one's going to be pretty simple. I'm going to pause it while we get those ready to go. Alright guys, there you have it. Looks super scale. We're getting so close. These cool little details, these are the details that make these planes look good. Got some gear door coming in store for you guys next. It's going to be on the next video. Got a couple of housekeeping things to do before we actually do our maiden. One of which is to check the balance on the EDFs and double check the CG. Of course, I don't know where it is. So, one more cool, clear look at those antennas. Top and bottom. There's one back there. So cool, guys. And then the Rolls-Royce logos. That thing back there. This thing. Guys, they're everywhere. These scale details, it's like crazy amounts. This. That shape on the nose. Of course, the landing gear. Got the oleo and the knee joint. A couple actuators. Got the white hubcaps, or wheels rather, in this case, flat white. It's just loaded. Guys, come back for more. This thing is going to be gorgeous flyer, I think. So gorgeous it probably won't need flaps, but you know what we're going to do. We're going to do them anyway. And you know what else comes with flaps, right? LEDs. And they're going to be awesome on this plane. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check the link below. If you're going to buy it, help support the channel. We appreciate it.